Satellite imagery shows that an Iranian rocket launch could be imminent. The purpose is to launch satellites into space, but that same long-range ballistic technology could also allow Tehran to launch longer-range weapons, including nuclear warheads. Behnam Ben Taleblu is a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Behnam, welcome to the program.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
So spell out the military significance of Iran possibly launching this rocket.
So the Islamic Republic, in addition to having a robust nuclear program and missile program, also has a robust space program. And under those auspices, it has a satellite launch vehicle or a space launch vehicle capability. And these things are essentially carrier rockets that try to put satellites into low Earth orbit. This is one of the lowest tiers for commercial space use. But at the same time, the regime actually has a parallel military space program as well, where it puts not commercial or not commercial satellites, but military satellites into space. Either way, both of these different satellite functions matter more because of the rocket and the delivery technology. You have powerful thrust, you learn about phasing, and that basically allows you to boost your missile systems, which currently are in the medium to at most intermediate range category for the Islamic Republic, into longer or potentially even ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile ranges. So if reconfigured, they really could provide the Islamic Republic a real boost for the range of its known missile program.
But at the same time, Iran has had several and successive failures of its rocket launchers. Do we know why they failed, and is there evidence that they're learning from their mistakes?
I think this evidence of learning is really key, because most of the reported failures have happened in the rockets that use 1990s a North Korean style engine, and those are liquid propellant systems, where many in the arms control community have not been as afraid of the potential military applications of those satellites, even though those potential military applications still exist. What the Islamic Republic has been creating, developing, and testing more so in the past 2 to 2.5 years are solid propellant motors, which have a much more direct military application. And the regime has had a comparably better, if you believe the reporting and piece together what else exists in the open source, track record with those. And that's what the regime seems to be wanting to step up here. And if they produce a phased or an entirely all solid propellant satellite launch vehicle one day, it would basically be one of the biggest telltale signs that this regime is going for an ICBM.
Because of that solid fuel as opposed to the liquid fuel. Solid fuel being used more for weapons instead of just for space purposes, space launch.
And it is absolutely possible to still use, liquid propellants. All of the regime's medium-range ballistic missiles use liquid propellants, and the regime has been trying to change that to keep systems that are more militarily, storable, movable. You can have solid fuel systems fueled and ready to go. They have less of a signature. They're less susceptible to these left of launch interdiction types of operations. So they're just greater military utility, and they're also more mobile. But broadly, all the countries that do have these very long-range strike capabilities like ICBMs, they tend to prefer solid propellants. So this really would be a huge telltale sign.
And Behnam, is this all indigenous development in Iran, or are they getting outside help?
Well, even as the regime does love to tout that its, missile program is all indigenous, what you see in terms of procurement patterns of technologies, the regime remains active in trying to illicitly procure things from, jurisdictions of weak central authority in Europe and Asia. But we cannot deny that there has been a real shift in terms of the domestic motor production capabilities. Earlier this year, the regime produced a large solid propellant motor, which may be used perhaps not in this upcoming rocket test, but in future ones. So there is a significant growth industry here, and that's something that U.S. sanctions, international sanctions, should really be trying to prevent, the foreign and domestic supply chain for these technologies.
Beyond the military and technical goals, what political benefit is Tehran looking for from these tests?
So ultimately, whether it's the nuclear program, the missile program, or even the space program, the regime, has two big forces driving these things: status and security. Security because of the weapons options and the deterrence and the punishment options, but status because the regime is trying to say how advanced some of these programs have been able to really be in the face of international or in the face of Western sanctions. And ultimately, much of the Islamic Republic's revolutionary ethos does talk about self-sufficiency, so they are trying to check that box as well. But in the short to medium term, when you have more of these successive kinds of launches, it becomes a political signaling mechanism that they cannot be deterred from an outside force. And so it's no surprise that you do have ultra hardliners at the helm in Iran now who do want to specifically speed up these base launch vehicle technologies.
You know, Israel has been threatened directly by Iran, and they've allegedly attacked Iran's nuclear facilities, nuclear scientists in the past. What has Israel's reaction been to this latest news?
As far as I've seen or heard, the Israelis haven't publicly commented on this, but what the Israelis have been doing every time there is not just the ballistic missile that is test launched by the Islamic Republic, but every time that there is also a space or a satellite launch vehicle, every 6 months there is a reporting mechanism at the United Nations, particularly the resolution that codifies the Iran nuclear deal, where these things can be reported and can be cataloged. And so the Israelis, as well as the Europeans, have been citing the potential military utility of these launches and getting it kind of saved and put in this UN registrar. But the problem is the UN actually hasn't been able to prove them to be violations of the deal, even though in the vast majority of the international community's opinion, those things are not just violations of the deal, but they're signs of the regime inching towards a longer range strike capability.
Behnam, very quickly, are you able to estimate how long it would take Iran to have a missile that could carry a nuclear warhead to the U.S.?
It really depends. There's at least right now 2 known medium-range ballistic missiles that we know obviously can't travel to the U.S., but that do fit a known bomb design. So, the rest, trying to scale that up to an intercontinental one would be speculation because we don't know enough about the foreign supply chain. But what the regime is doing is that it's inching along, and these kind of tests, whether failed or successful, will help them inch along.
All right, Behnam, thanks so much for being on the program.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any future Government Matters interviews.